Yeah. They're live, apparently.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
This is our first YouTube live broadcast. This is Jackson. I'm the big cat. We're bringing our podcast live today. So we aren't recording yet. We're going to let everyone tune in. If you're already here, thanks for coming in. We got 5 whopping people.
And if you could do us a huge favor, just making sure we're getting this right, or give us some sort of thumbs up to make sure that you can hear us correctly, because I have
Coach Jake's in the house. Hey, Jake.
Good to see you live. All right.
Sweet. Good for you to be here. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Whoa.
All right. We got a lot of people here.
We're good.
So we should get started.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Action.
Welcome to the Fast Cat Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Overton. Some call me the Big Cat. And I'm joined by the one and only
Jackson Charles Law.
Your middle name is Charles?
It is. What's your middle name?
Hudson.
Mm-hmm. Whoa.
Frank Hudson.
Nice.
Thought my name was FH till I was in 3rd grade.
Okay. Now that's why FH. Isn't your Instagram thing FH? Fast
Cat FH.
Yeah.
That's
right.
That's it.
Makes sense now. Well, now everyone knows a new fun fact about us.
Fun fact. Wow. Thanks for everyone that's joining in. This is great. This is an evolution of our live podcast from Facebook. We're just bringing it over to YouTube. We think we'll get a better audience and be able to share this with a broader amount of people. But what are we podcasting about today?
Yeah, today I think is kind of a relevant topic. I mean, obviously, gravel is so hot right now, as they say.
Hot AF.
It's hot AF. And so we're going to talk a little bit about kind of breaking down gravel racing, analyzing, what to look for in, post-race analysis with gravel rides and races, and then just kind of talk about I think it's the 4 main kind of pillars of a successful gravel race, and how to prepare a little bit. And I know we've talked about this before, but we just sort of wanted to dig into this topic a little bit more because it was a coaching client generated sort of idea. And it's just, I think, important to keep talking about because it's, we get a ton of questions about it. It's a common struggle. But before we do the podcast, we have to talk about the new forum.
Oh, yeah.
Very exciting.
Yes, everyone. We have a new forum. It's forum.fastcatcoaching.com, and it's open to the public. It is a place where you can ask a training question. Myself and Jackson moderate the group along with the team of Fast Cat coaches. Coach Jake is on there, Isaiah, Allie, Brandon. We're all over there, and we're taking your questions. This is just another evolution of our private Facebook group. So go over there. You do have to register on our website to join. It's not anonymous, and there's some good discussions going on over there. Brandon just posted a how to bunny hop video. There's questions about what to do if you have to go on vacation with your training plan. Someone was sharing the book Good to Go by Christy Ashwandon, and thoughts on that. So head on over there, forum.fastcatcoaching.com, and look forward to seeing y'all over there.
Yeah, it's super clean. It's kind of broken down into multiple categories. So we got gravel and cyclocross and nutrition and all sorts of good stuff. So it kind of helps to keep it more organized and segmented. And yeah, there's already a decent amount of action going on. And so I'll be posting the podcasts in there. And that's where you can also ask us questions for future Q&A podcasts. So
there's a whole entire podcast category. Yeah. So if you have any questions on this podcast that we don't, that you don't remember or you want to discuss, just head over there and there, select podcast, and we'll discuss it.
Yep. And of course, there's also, my main one is the nutrition section. So if you have questions on nutrition for cyclists, for athletes, or just general stuff, I'm happy to answer. So yeah, head on over to forum.fastcatcoaching.com, and we can I'll put that in the show notes of this episode for those of you listening on the normal podcast.
Yes. All right. So what other announcements do we have?
Coaching intensives.
Coaching intensives are still on. If you have any questions about those, if you want to come stay at my house, learn how to win in the kitchen, recover like a pro, and do some really good training in the roads and mountains of Boulder, Colorado, give me an email and I'll tell you all about it, including the dates. But there's one in June, one in July, and one in August so far. Well, we're going to the Oat Root.
Yeah, it's coming up.
We made reservations.
It's officially official.
It's official. Yes.
I'm super excited.
Me too.
It's going to be great.
Sea level watts.
I know.
Well, kind of close. It's up in the mountains. Lower than here. Yeah.
It'll be, I mean, but yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's going to be like those punchy, steep climbs are hard no matter what. But yeah, I mean, I've never been to that area and I've heard it's amazing. And so it'll be a cool way to experience my first Oat Root.
Oat Root. Yeah. I'm just looking forward to riding with everyone, riding the Oat Root, and also visiting Asheville.
Yeah. And so we'll be doing a live podcast from there on Thursday, the Thursday before the weekend. And I will be bringing my multiple cameras, and we're going to be doing some cool videos from there and kind of filming the experience. And so it'd be cool to meet some of you guys that are listeners of the podcast that are either doing the ride or that, you know, live in the area. So definitely reach out if you are going to be around. I
think maybe the idea, I haven't run this by you yet, but the idea is to maybe record the podcast in the lobby of the hotel. And if people want to just swing by and just say hi, maybe we can pass around the microphone if they got a question.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. That would be awesome.
Cool. That'd be the equivalent of the 70s and 80s where the TV radio shows took callers.
Yeah.
We called in.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you guys are doing in the comments section. So speaking of that, if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments here. Coach Jake is taking them on demand. We'll be able to see them and can maybe hit them as we're talking.
All right. Well, should we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
So we're talking about gravel race analysis, essentially. And I've been coaching a number of gravel athletes for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And there's 4 things that are generally I concentrate on Monday after the gravel race. And those are nutrition, pacing, hydration, and equipment. And probably in the order of what goes wrong, probably the biggest thing is pacing first, then hydration, because that's a logistical problem. Then there's nutrition, and then there's did I flat? Did my bike let me down? Did my tire choice let me down? So
or your derailleur getting ripped off in the mud.
Yeah, if you do like land run or where it gets muddy at Dirty Kansas, that's happened. So yeah, let's talk about those, and let's talk about. I want to talk. As you know, we're big into power data. That's how I coach a lot of my athletes. It's how I coach all my athletes. And then we'll talk about gravel power, but gravel power data files are complete opposite of like what the last 15 or 20 years of the sports science has developed from road racing power, data. These courses are so difficult, and it's just a true test of endurance, and there's no 5-minute crux moments. FTP it's good to know, but it's not the end all for gravel racing. It really these races are a tortoise and the hare type of situation, and you want the power data. Looking at it post race is very, very telling, and we'll talk about what it means for pacing. But during the event, I'm not really looking at my watts too much. Like, I guess everyone's so in tune with their watts, they'll know when they're going good and stuff. But when you talk about pacing, if you're doing an 8-hour race, you probably don't want to be doing threshold watts in the first hour. Yeah. That's a good rule of thumb. But if you are and you're feeling good and it's easy, then that's going to be some positive reinforcement that you're really, you're on a good day and your training is coming through. But that's kind of an aside. But yeah, power data is just unlike everything that has been developed in like WKO4 and, just over the years that we've become accustomed to. So yeah, we should just get into that.
Yeah, I think with pacing these gravel races, it's both an art and a science, and a lot of that, obviously comes from experience. But you know, like you said, it's very different from road racing, where in a road race, you're kind of riding in this pack, and there's a lot of time to rest and recover, and then you have to be able to just give it the beans for 5 minutes to get over the final climb, or to make the break, and then it comes down to a sprint. That's typically not how these gravel races happen. For people that
we grew up with,
developed, and so maybe if if you don't have road racing background, you're just only doing gravel, it's different, but it's very tempting. And this is something that we see a lot, and that I've experienced myself, and I'm sure Frank's experienced, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, that it's very tempting to from the gun, it's exciting, everyone's together, it's the egos are getting stoked that to go out super hard,
to overdo it.
And when in reality, a lot of these races are so long, and there's not a lot of crux moments necessarily, where there would be in a road race, where that it's really about, I like to kind of compare it to ultra running and these kind of big ultra endurance races. Obviously, we're talking about things like Kansas, some of these longer gravel races, things like the Crusher don't necessarily apply to this, but where it's the people that do the best, the races are won by people that sort of slow down the least over the course of the race. And that comes down to these factors we're talking about: efficiency in terms of pacing, having a dialed, super well-planned nutrition and hydration plan, and having your equipment, dialed, because all those things increase your efficiency and allow you to just conserve as much energy, so that when you are riding and over the course of the day, it's not just suddenly you hit this wall and you just drop. Suddenly it's you're, maybe you are slowing down because of inevitably during an 8-hour, 7-hour race, it's you're going down. But a lot of people have problems when that drop is sharp, because they are dehydrated, or they're bonking, or they get a flat or something.
Yeah, these gravel races, getting into the course, they're so demanding. The course is going to take care of the tactics. And unlike a road race where there's opportunities to sit in the pack, draft, conserve your energy, in these gravel races, you can draft and you can kind of sit in, but this course is not going to pedal itself. And you generally, even when the pack is riding the fastest they can over the course. So it's completely different. Generally, athletes are going to be doing tempo to sweet spot watts at any one point of the course. A good friend of mine, Ben Delaney, did the Dirty Kansas, and I asked him what his intensity factor was for the race. That's his normalized power from start to finish, and I do believe it was 0.68, which for all you power astute students out there, they'll recognize that as kind of low zone 2. So, in the tortoise and the hare, of course, Ben started off wicked fast. He was in the front group. He did not maintain a line of sight, could not see what would otherwise been easily avoidable objects because he's drafting in the pack, and he flats.
Yeah.
And he does that after ripping it, super hard watts, and goes on to, limp in home at barely zone 2 the last 50 miles. So that's what we mean by the tortoise and the hare. And no one ever says in the post-race activity comments when they're giving me the play-by-play that they went out too easy.
Yeah.
No one.
Right.
And this, we've known this for years with Leadville 100, and the mountain bikers out there that do these, that are good at the 3-hour, 4-hour races. They're already, kind of in tune with not going out too hard. But I think for a lot of the road racers or Fondo riders that come into gravel, because you do start with 500 people all together, it's super fun, but it's really easy to let your ego get the best of you and go out and try to hang with as strong of a group as possible. And that you pay for that.
Right. Because, I mean, a lot of these races, there's a lot of time. I mean, these are races that take, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. And that's a lot of time to either fall apart and lose it all, or to sort of ease into it and kind of ride into it, you know. And obviously, like, the people that are at the point end of these races, you know, the Ted Kings or, you know, the Josh Berrys of the world, not me. But like those kind of guys, like, they can handle doing it because it's like their job, you know, like they are used to doing that, you know. So like Taylor Finney or these EF guys that would be at Kansas, like that's literally their job. Like they're going out there and they can handle like giving it the beans for 8 hours because that's, you know, they're ready for that. But this, I think, a podcast and these kind of strategies apply to the 99%, you know, the people that are actually, you know, trying to have a good time and do well and feel good and feel happy about the result. And so it's very tempting to, and I mean, I've made this mistake many, many times in road races and in gravel races, that there's so much excitement happening, you know, right at the beginning of the race. And, you know, you end up, you know, burning too many matches at the start, you know. And someone asked about Rebecca's Private Idaho, talking about, you know, the pacing for that and like the demands of that race. And, you know, for those of you that haven't done it, it's basically, it's like a 100-mile race, you know, gravel race. And in the first like 30 minutes of the race, there's like a 15 or 20 minute long climb that's pretty hard, pretty steep, and it's all together. And so it's really tempting to just like go as hard as you can. And what happened to me this year or this past year is like I was with the front group going up the climb basically at threshold, and inevitably later on in the race I blew up, because it's just like you feel good in that moment because you're fresh, but then you pay for it later.
Right. So with the ego and the pacing and the power, a lot of, you know, it comes down to the course. If there's a selective part of the course in the first hour of the race, you know, everyone can ride that at threshold watts. You have to ask yourself, what do I gain by doing so? What do I not really gain? If you're doing this climb and you're already by yourself, just get into your pace. Right. That for the most part, that's going to be tempo and sweet spot. If you're in the front group or in a really good group, ask yourself, what is getting in this group gain me? So for a race like Rebecca's Private Idaho, you come over that climb, you're in a good group. That's your train, you know, to pull you along, to establish a gap from everyone that have made the selection behind you. Same way with the Almanzo 100 in Minnesota. 20-minute climb right off the bat, but there's the next 80 miles are flat. So you go wicked hard on that first 20 minutes, but then you get in a good group, and that's pretty much where you'll finish as long as you eat and drink and don't flat. So, but on other races like a Crusher, like 1 hour long right off the get-go, you know, what does making the front group get you? And Jackson's got a story about this, and you know, for 90% of, I think, most of the athletes that I've worked with, and I think that might be listening, you're already racing at your own pace. So at that point, you want to settle in to like tempo and sweet spot watts. And so, but those are for races with climbing. There's plenty of races that aren't climbing. Like the, you know, if anyone out there wants to share with us their intensity factor from the Dirty Kansas, go ahead and like post that in the comments, either live now or afterwards. You know, I doubt many people are doing the Dirty Kansas greater than 0.8, which is like tempo watts. Yeah. Like I'm looking at a file from the Bootlegger 100 right now, race in Western North Carolina this past Saturday. The athlete had an IF of 0.78. So that was really good. Nicely paced. And his finishing time was 8 hours, 9 minutes. And 106 miles, 11,500 feet of climbing. And, you know, wisely so on the first climb, he held back and, you know, kept it tempo and sweet spot watts up the first two big climbs. And then after that, there was even a bigger climb, which you got to get up to the top of, an hour-long climb. So, again, back to the tortoise and the hare, and no one ever says I went out too easy. And in this race, and everyone so since everyone's kind of relating gravel racing to themselves, everyone finishes crippled.
Yeah.
Like everyone's watts go down. And so really it's just like what Jackson's saying, it's like how less of your watts can you go down? And that just comes from doing long rides, in that we talk about in our gravel simulation.
Right, because again, in like a road race scenario, it's about conserving as much energy as possible for the last hour of the race, where you can make the selection last climb. But because
right,
I mean, I think it's probably super rare to see many of these gravel races coming down to a sprint. I mean, I think,
and even if so, it's between one other person.
And it's like a sad looking sprint. Everyone's so gassed,
Yeah, and you've already decided the race. You're just finishing up the details at that point.
Yeah, and so it's like, you have to be able to measure that effort. You're gonna have a much better day if you conserve that energy over the course of the day, rather than just kind of like banking everything on the sprint, I guess. So it's a tough balance, but it comes from experience. And I think, again, like you said, that's where the gravel simulation rides come in to play for all of these factors. But with pacing, I think, like I talked about, I think in a couple podcasts ago, where sort of my biggest regret about going into the Crusher was that in those gravel simulation rides, I wish that I had paced it a little bit differently, so I could have felt what it felt like to be at that limit, but still have an hour left in the race and a big climb left or something like that. Because it's very easy to feel super good on the first climb, and then just kind of
everyone feels good on the first climb, and they feel so good that they go too hard, and then you pay for that 4 hours later, 5 hours later.
Yeah.
Thus the tortoise and the hare. And, when you do your simulation rides, that's when you can really nail your pacing. It's like, okay, I want to do tempo watts for the first hour, even though I feel great.
Yeah.
Then you want to try to maybe do tempo watts in the 6th hour.
Yeah.
That would be like an incredible training ride,
right.
If you're able to do that. So gravel racing is not so much about threshold, max 20-minute power, things like that. It's really just the diesel.
Should we move on to hydration?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So after pacing, the second of our 4 that trips athletes up is hydration. And the reason why, everyone knows they need to drink, it's logistics. And we've podcasted on this before. You can bring all of your nutrition in your back pocket, but you cannot bring all of your hydration. Yeah. So this is a hydration strategy. This is what you got to figure out. And me as a coach, I'm a big fan of hydration packs, hydration bladders, because you're carrying it with you. You got that nozzle. It holds 100 ounces, and you can slurp off of that. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about one-handed nutrition, two-handed nutrition. With a hydration pack, it's no-handed nutrition, hydration.
Yeah.
But so I think you got to figure out when you do your races, is this a hydration pack race or is this a bottle race? And if it's a bottle race, you want to look at where you're getting. Most guys can bring 3 bottles.
Yeah.
2 on the frame, 1 in the back pocket. So let's call that 60 ounces. Well, that's good for about 90 minutes of gravel racing. You got 6 hours. So where are you going to get your hydration after that? What happens? This is a good equipment one. What happens if your bottle ejects off your bike?
Very common. If you at any of these gravel races,
you'll see likely thing.
It's a graveyard for bottles.
That's why I have steel cages on my gravel bike and not carbon cages, because those steel cages you can bend so that it fits that bottle super tight.
Yeah.
You can get them for $7 at your local bike shop. They're a little bit heavier, but they hold that bottle a lot tighter than a $50 carbon thing. That's silly. But so you have to ask, where after the first 90 minutes, where are you getting your hydration? Is it aid station, neutral feed? Do you plan on stopping or not? Then stopping or not is a whole different ball of wax in terms of well, pacing, it takes time. You're on the clock. And if you're in a good group, like maybe a Dirty Kansas is a different situation, but like Steamboat Gravel, which we've talked about, if you're in a group of 12 guys and everyone's working and you're
bottles, but it's very easy, especially in a gravel race, you're like, maybe it's washboardy or you're just
you're doing 30 miles an hour.
It's, I mean, you see guys in the Tour de France, like trying to grab these bottles and they miss the feed, and you're kind of SOL at that point.
Yeah.
And, and then a lot of these races don't even have that. Like they have aid stations, but you have to physically stop to be able to get water. And so again, like coming back to the hydration pack scenario, like it seems a little bit goofy and kind of nerdy, but it's also really effective. It's really practical for these kinds of events. I mean, that's why you see these guys at Kansas and stuff wearing them, because
that's all they got.
It's all you got. And like, that person is going to be drinking more than you. They don't have to stop and worry about getting a feed. They can just blow through the aid station. You can carry a lot of water. Sure, it's heavy, but like in a lot of these races, A, it's hot, and B, it's pretty flat. And so it's like weight isn't necessarily a huge factor. And again, dehydration is going to slow you down a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's tortoise in the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this file from the Bootlegger 100. The reason why I mentioned the steel cages that I'm fans of, because this athlete, unfortunately, his bottle's ejected. And so he went for the first 3 hours of the race with no water. And that's a controllable. The hydration pack solves that problem. Steel cages solve that problem. This information is coming from me. I've worn a hydration pack during the Tour of the Gila, a road race.
I want to see a picture of that.
Yeah, for the Mogollon road race, and it's hot in New Mexico, you do 95 miles flat, then you turn right and you do a 20-minute climb as hard as you can.
Yeah.
So, and I'm a privateer. I don't have a protein in the feed zone. And I did 95 miles flat with a hydration bladder, drank it all, felt super good. I took it off and dropped it at the right-hand turn.
Nice.
Slammed the 20-minute climb, came in 6th. And I was a happy camper. Meanwhile, everyone else is halfway up the climb. They're dehydrated.
Yeah.
I'm kicking their ass. And they did the race on like 2 or 3 water bottles.
Yeah.
So I've also done Super Week with hydration pack.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crit racing with the...
Not the crits, the road courses.
Okay.
It's so hot in Wisconsin in the summer. And there, when you're looking at a 3.5-hour race and there's 0 feeds, it's like, what are you going to do? Right. Well, I'm going to be the nerd with a hydration pack. And I think you can bring that mentality to your gravel race.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it makes even more sense for a gravel race, of course, because, I mean, you're taking it to the next level if you're doing Crusher. I mean, maybe not Crusher because it's pretty short. But if you're looking at like Steamboat Gravel, it's 150 miles. It's probably going to take at least 7 hours, depending on how fast you are.
That's the Phil
group.
Game and fast group. I think it's gonna, for us mere mortals, like 8.
Yeah, and so that's a long time to be on the bike, and
it's a lot of water bottles if you're staying hydrated.
Right, and again, if we're talking, during like fueling during racing and training, every 30 minutes. I mean, you should be, when it's super hot like that, you should be at least having a bottle an hour.
If not more.
Because, it's 80, 90 degrees, whatever. You're sweating nonstop. You're working super hard.
Yeah. I mean, if you cramp up in that 7th hour, again, this is tortoise in the hair. I mean, it really pays to be the tortoise and stay hydrated and not cramp up. And you're going to pass everyone that, went with 2 bottles and, took off, but you're going to see them later. And, it doesn't look cool, but who cares when you finish? And that's kind of the end game. One thing that I just thought of, hydration pack is like 100 ounces. Let's call it that. Yeah. That's just like, a large water bottle. When you do a race that's super long, you even might want to have a spare bladder in the feed zone that you take. You take the bladder out that's empty and put your new bladder in, and then you're going to be super hydrated. But that takes some extra planning.
Right. And
I
again,
think I may do that for Steamboat.
Yeah. I mean,
I think I may race Steamboat with a hydration.
Maybe I will too.
Yeah.
You know, as long as it's cool looking.
I'm just gonna see how uncool I can look. I don't know. I did the Mercury tour in 2000. It was 104 degrees in Steamboat. Yeah, it was so hot. The 2-hour race cross country, we wilted. It was just. I mean, so it can get hot in Steamboat in August.
Yeah, and again, like I think the main kind of theme of this podcast, you know, as we're applying it to gravel racing, is control the controllables. You know, I think obviously there's a lot out of our control when it comes to bike racing and stuff, but we have the opportunity to control a lot of factors, and so hydration is one. You know, the pacing is another, and I think maybe nutrition is obviously. Something we've talked about at length before, but
is easy.
It's easy and
easier
than hydration for sure, because again, you can take it all with you.
Yeah.
But a lot of it comes down to planning ahead of time, having that whole plan dialed going into the race. You've done it in the simulation rides, and you've done it, you know, multiple times over, so that you've trained your gut. You know, you have everything ready. Because like we talked about in the Oat Route podcast, with Colby, you know, having all of that stuff ready to go so you don't have to think about it come race day makes an enormous difference. And all of those little things add up and will really help you have a good day.
Yeah. Yeah. So nutrition, to segue, is controllable. You kind of have to be a Boy Scout out there, always be prepared. These are, you know, we've podcasted before about our gravel simulation rides. This is your opportunity to, it's a dress rehearsal for hydration and nutrition, and obviously bike and pacing, but, you know, just lay out all your food of what you're going to eat every 30 minutes. We podcasted about that 2 weeks ago, and put it in your pockets. You can organize it, you know, gels on the left, bars on the right, blocks in the middle.
Rice cakes in the
Rapha shorts, cargo
shorts. Not sponsored.
But like, you know, just literally, like if you're going to do a 6-hour race, then bring the equivalent food for eating on a multiple of 30 minutes. If it's going to be an 8-hour race, bring that amount. You know, study the where the aid stations are, what is available in the aid stations. I had an athlete one time. He was like, this race is sponsored by First Endurance. That's what's going to be available in the feed zones. Should I start using First Endurance in training? I was like, yeah, that's a good idea, because you want to see if your gut likes that or can tolerate it. If you've been using one product that's completely different than First Endurance, and then you hit the First Endurance gels and drink mix for the first time, and if that doesn't agree with you, you know, I mean, that's something that's going to impact your race. That was controllable because you could have found that out in training during your simulation ride. So look into what's available in the neutral feeds from the race's sponsors, and then try those out in training.
Yeah. And like even going a step back, just because of the nutrition nerd that I am, the nutrition plan doesn't start and end on race day. It also, you know, you have to also, it's, you know, the month before, the week before the race of what you're eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because it all impacts that. I mean, it does get tricky with traveling, and where you're like, okay, maybe I'm traveling out to this race and my flight gets in late and I'm scrambling around. All of the things you can control, though, to be fair. But like, you know, you have to be able to eat a really, you know, solid meal that you are used to, that your body is used to eating, you know, in the days before, because you have to build up those glycogen stores over time. You can't just like carb load the night before and expect, you know, to feel amazing, because your stomach's going to be like super full. And so it's kind of a process. And so make sure, you know, in the week leading up to the race, you're well hydrated in general, you're eating really, you know, high quality food. And then my recommendation is always, you know, back off the fiber in the days leading up to it, because last thing you want going into like a huge epic hard day is just a gut full of fiber trying to digest that's not even, you know, giving you any energy, or like it's just there getting digested and kind of filling you up and making you feel full. And so, just things to consider.
I'm having flashbacks to the scene in the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
I haven't seen that.
It's because you're too young. And when Spicoli, Sean Penn, goes into the restaurant without his shirt, and the restaurant manager points to the sign and says, "Learn it, live it, love it." It's talking about their no shirt, no shoes policy. And it's hilarious. So go back and watch Fast Times.
Wait, how does that apply? What's the
learn it, live it, love it to your nutrition? And this is, it's kind of a lifestyle, and you don't want to adopt this new nutrition plan the day before the race.
Right.
That's what you're practicing and with your training on a weekly, daily basis. And that's going, what you eat the night before your gravel race is what you should have eaten the night before your gravel simulation training ride. And for breakfast, it all goes into the preparation of learning it, loving it, living
it. And it's like, another thing to consider too is I think a lot of people make the mistake of like in the weeks leading up to their, A race or something, they're like concerned about weight loss and they're like trying to lose a bunch of weight before the race.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last time that you want to be trying to lose weight. It's like, it's too little too late.
A week before the race, that's your race weight. Just stop.
Attention. Exactly. And so, but instead of focusing on restricting and losing weight, it's like, you should be focusing on the quality, not the quantity of your nutrition.
Totally.
Get in, in the couple weeks before, get in, more micronutrients and, very nutritious, foods so that it can help keep the immune system going so you don't get sick right before the race, but also just eating, high quality food so that your body is able to store that and use it for energy come race day. And again, practice that going into your gravel simulation rides because that's hugely important. I think it's a secret weapon that
nutrition. These gravel races are such a test of endurance. They're so epic. They're so difficult. It's not your 5-hour stage in the mountains. Those guys make it look easy, but they kill it on the calls, but they're riding easy in the valley.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as that in gravel racing. You don't ride easy on the flat. You're going as hard as you can. It's literally, like I was telling an athlete this morning, think of your 20-minute field test and extend that out to 5 or 6 hours. That's really what it is. And it's how much you can eat and drink during.
And survive. It's a war of attrition out there.
Yeah.
And the people that win that war are the ones who are the most prepared and the most, they're slowing down the least compared to everyone else because of their, their nutrition plan, they're staying hydrated, they're being as efficient as possible, all of that. So
we have a question from the YouTube crowd. Thanks a lot. I want to, before we go on to getting into equipment and what you can take away from your race, our fourth item, it asks, gravel aero bars or not, is there a benefit? Okay, so yes, there is a benefit in getting more aero. If you're going over 17 miles an hour. Why? Well, under 17 miles an hour, the wind resistance and the speed is not enough that bending over and getting into a lower frontal area will help you increase your time. But when you're going over 17 miles an hour, when you're going 20 miles an hour, the wind speed is fast enough so that if you can decrease the hole that you punch in the wind, you will go faster. So that's the conundrum. So and I know this from time trialing as a roadie, and the question was, stay in your hoods or on your drops. And the consensus is when you are on a climb and your speed drops below 17 miles an hour, there's no longer an aero benefit. So therefore you get out on the hoods.
You're more comfortable.
Yeah, where you can get more torque as you pull up on the bars to deliver more power to the bike uphill. That's when you come out on the hoods. But when you're over 18, like if you're riding up Left-Hand Canyon, for those of you that are familiar with that in Boulder, Colorado, that is a climb that you can maintain greater than 17 miles an hour. And that's why you want to stay in your aero bars. So for a race like Dirty Kansas with the average speed over 20 miles an hour or getting close, yeah, there's a huge aero benefit. And it's no different than a Tour de France time trial. It's the same physics.
I will add to that there is also a safety factor.
Yeah,
because a lot of these gravel races are technical. Maybe there's washboards. You're in a group. You're tired. There's no brakes on there. There's no, unless you have some sort of fancy TT wireless E-tap gravel bike Aero bar setup, you can't shift gears. And so like
if you have that on your gravel bike, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
no.
you just go home.
No. Yeah.
But like it's so if you're in that Aero position, you're very vulnerable for you have very little control and handling over the bike.
This has to be when you're alone.
Alone.
Never in the group.
On a flat, pretty safe stretch of road.
Certainly not in turns or loose chunk thunder.
I can barely keep my hands on the bars in a normal bike's setups in some areas of these gravel races.
Honestly, that's why I like the Eddie Merckx position down in the drops. I mean, you're getting pretty aero there, which is, I think, will suffice. I mean, only on these. The reason why it's been popularized in the Dirty Kanza is, flat terrain, a lot of straightaways, and the gravel is consistent, and you can get in an aero position and benefit from it. But, for most of the gravel races we're talking about that are under 17 miles an hour on the climbs with very technical descents and inconsistent road, I don't really see a benefit. And definitely never in a pack. That's it. Sometimes we'll do group rides here in town, and once in a while there'll be like a time trialist or a multi-sport athlete joins in, and it's fine as long as you don't get in the aero bars.
Right, because it's like, it's a hazard to others. It's like easy to like get into like the washboards or something and like, get like bounced over and, overlap wheels and crash some people out. And so, that's a nice segue into equipment. Yeah. Okay, so equipment.
So we kind of already talked about steel water bottle cages. The biggest thing that I see when we're breaking down a race afterwards is, did you flat or not? Again, tortoise and a hare. Flatting is the hare, not flatting is the tortoise. Sure, maybe the tire you chose is heavier, has a higher rolling resistance, but not flatting is faster than flatting. And so, what was an example? Like the other day, so there's a new gravel series coming out called the Roll Massif. I referenced my friend Ben Delaney. He was the guy that did 0.68 for the DK as an intensity factor. He is, this is his new job. They're putting on the Wild Horse Gravel. It's May 11th, coming up in the western slope of Colorado. I just asked him the other day, what's the tire choice? And the recommendation, I would just want everyone to know out there, is about 38s, because there are portions of the course where it's going to get real out there, and flatting when it's real is going to be way slower than running a 38. If you choose a 32 millimeter for 90% of the course, but you flat on that 10% of the course that is risky, that's now you're the hare, and those tortoises are going to zoom past you while you're changing your flat, if you're able to change it.
Yeah, I mean, you're losing a lot more time changing a flat than you are losing it with, like you said, with the rolling resistance or the added weight. And obviously weight is an important factor in a lot of these gravel races, especially something like the Crusher or some of these like really climby races.
Yeah.
Again, like a lot of that comes from winning in the kitchen. A lot of that comes from the frame that you're using, and but you really don't want to skimp or sacrifice that tire strength, because I mean, you see any of these gravel races, you just see people on the sides of the road constantly, because they flat, they have some sort of, or even if they have the right tire, they're still running a super worn tire that they've been training on for like months. It's like, you're paying this money, you're taking this time, you're doing all this training, you're getting a coach, you're doing all this effort to prepare for this race. Least you can do is spend an extra $100 on a pair of, new tires for the race.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing. It's like for the Crusher last year, I put on a brand new pair of tires, had zero issues. And I think,
No, keep going with your thing, but I want to talk about tire choice, and the Crusher's a great one to relate it
Yeah,
to.
for sure. I mean, I think because a lot of these races, you know, there's such a wide variety of equipment choices that you can do. Can you do it on a road bike with fat tires? Or, I mean, like fatter than a road tire, but like get by with the lightest, fastest machine possible. I mean, a perfect example of that is Ben King multiple years
I
ago.
was going to mention him.
Yeah, like he was on a road bike and with road tires, and he flatted like 5 times or something.
He could have won.
Had he been on a bike that was prepared,
had he not flatted 5 times. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, so that's he was the hare, and we all were. I mean, I passed him, and I started behind him. Yeah, it's just silly.
And comfort is also a big part of it too. I mean, a 38 mil tire on super gnarly gravel road is a lot more comfortable than a really smooth 32 mil tire.
Right.
And so
for 90% of the Crusher, you could do it on a 32 mil.
Yeah.
Very comfortable. You could do it on a 30 mil. But there's just a couple of sections on the course where there's a high probability of flatting on anything less than a 35. Really, a 38 is going to be even better. So, you got to know the course. I mean, really look at the videos that the race promoters put out. Talk with people that have done the races before. If you've done the race, we should also talk about experience, because when you go and do one of these epic races for the first time, you're going to learn a lot about. Well, you're going to learn about pacing. You're going to learn about your hydration, your nutrition, and your equipment. And then when you go back in year 2, fix everything that you break down from the first year and take the steps to improve upon that. And that can be tire choice, equipment, hydration, nutrition, pacing. So, but yeah, the tire choice thing, like we were getting back to this Roll Massif. If you look at the pictures on the internet, looks like beautiful red dirt, perfectly smooth road. But then when you look into some of the videos that they've been putting out lately, there's some sections that are just white knuckle, and you need a 35 is going to be okay, but a 38 is going to have a higher probability of not flatting.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, coming back to Rebecca's, for example, I know a lot of people are probably interested in that race, and especially the stage race component. She requires that you use the same bike and, the same setup for all 3 stages. And the first stage is basically a single track mountain bike race. You're on single track. It's kind of hairy. There's some rocks and gnarliness. And so, but then there's like the second day is an uphill time trial, and on a pretty good road that you could ride a road bike up it, basically, but you have to use the same bike. And so, a lot of, like I said, there's a huge range now with all these bike manufacturers and tires and wheels, and so you have to experiment to a certain extent, but you also have to take into consideration what the best setup is for you. Are you focused on, saving as much weight as possible? Are you focused on comfort so that you can, feel strong and good the whole time? Or are you just trying to avoid any sort of mechanical because that's happened to you in the past, and you, aren't as confident in changing a flat out on the road? I think that it comes down to finding a perfect balance between all of those things. And I mean, for me, like, I love the Gravel King SK tire by Panaracer. That's pretty much what I like. Only,
That's what I use too.
Yeah. And so that zero issues in the Crusher, zero issues.
Tires are very good. The Donnelly.
Yeah, those are great. And so, I like the 38s. I mean, I did a road ride on up Super Flag here this morning in Boulder on my 38 mil gravel tires with 40 psi, and it's slow going, but it's fine. And so I think a lot of that is in your mind, that it's going to be super slow, and it's going to be but trust us, the last thing you want to do is be changing flats. I've just heard so many horror stories from DK in particular, that people are getting 5 flats, in the first 2 hours of that race. And it's like, that sounds
Got to maintain a line of sight. If you're riding in the pack, you're risking it. One thing that occurred to me just now is the style of the way you ride with regards to your tire choice. And I know this from mountain biking because we all had a mountain bike competitor that wasn't as fast on the climb, and he was a really good descender, but he would put himself at a higher probability of flattening because he'd be ripping the descents.
Yeah.
And guaranteed this guy would passes on the beginning of the descent. We'd see him like 5 minutes later changing a tire. And, that's the last you saw him all the time. And it's like, if you would just concentrate on becoming a better climber, feather the descent and not flat, well, that's faster every time. And you can do that in your gravel racing if you want to choose a little bit more aggressive tire if you're living on the edge. But so like there's like, let's just take the Crusher, for example. You don't have to ride that descent as fast as possible. You can feather your brakes and take it nice and conservatively and maybe keep your average speed down. There's even the section at the top of the climb before the first feed zone where I have flatted before. And in years since then, I actually check my speed to not go as fast so I don't have as less likely a chance of flatting. And so when you're doing your gravel race, if you do have you could do it on a 40, you could do it on, these days gravel bikes have like mountain bike tires.
Yeah.
You can just charge through anything at any speed with one of those. But say you have a 35 millimeter setup, the BWR is coming up. That's a great example because that is a road course for the most part. There's some gravel, but there's some technical single track littered with rocks where you are going to flat if you run a 30 millimeter. But actually, that's kind of the tire choice du jour, so to speak. And what you have to do is just ride slowly on those descents and check your ego, kind of pick your way through that part, guaranteed to not flat. And that is like 1% of the race versus the hour-long smooth gravel climb that favors a smaller tire choice. So it's always a balance. That's what makes these gravel races fun. Yeah. Mountain biking, different courses choose different. You want to choose different tires, whether it's muddy, hard pack, whether it's just you need a big knob or you need a semi-slick. Gravel racing is like that these days with tire choice. So, but mostly it's the width.
Yeah. It's like a lot of these, like Burke says, about the Crusher, that like the race isn't going to be won on the descent of the Col de Crush, but it can be lost. And I mean, for me, like I got dropped on the descent from the front group because I was like, I'm going to take this chill. I've heard all these horror stories about this descent, and it's hairy for sure. But like, I mean, you are like,
but you caught back up.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was going to say, like, I caught back up to the front group shortly after, like within, a couple kilometers of the descent, if that. But I also minimize my risk of crashing. I minimize my risk of flatting. And it's also an opportunity to recover, to get a little bit of rest, because a lot of these people that are, ripping these descents or white knuckling it, they're fully like, gripping their handlebars super hard, and they're like pedaling through, they're not relaxing and breathing and, getting that extra recovery in it. So I think it's important to do that because it's literally 10 minutes of a 5-hour race.
Such a small percentage of the race. And this is where mountain bikers have such an advantage, because this is kind of like mountain bike racing. When you do you win the race on the climb, not on the descent. So tire choice. But I like to live on the edge. And that's why, I think trying to run 32s at the Crusher would be a neat little experiment. But I would feather the heck out of the descent. I would go so slow to guarantee not to flat, but I think it would be, you'd probably flat though. I don't know. It's just such a dynamic race. But the point is, the reason why I wanted to include this in the post-race breakdown is, if you flatted, don't chalk it up to just bad luck. There is a reason. Most likely. Did you flat because you choose a wimpy tire? Did you flat because you didn't upgrade to tubeless? Did you have tubes in there? Or not enough pressure? Or because you weren't paying attention, you banged into the rock? Or you're riding in the group, like what happens in the Dirty Kanza, and you didn't maintain a line of sight. Or also in the Dirty Kanza, those creek crossings, the streams, they're rideable, but they're risky. There's a risk reward because you can't see what's underneath the water, and so you can bash a rock there. That's where a lot of flats are. You see people like 10 feet beyond the creek crossing changing their tire.
Yeah.
So these are all, getting back to the Boy Scout, the tortoise and the hare, all preventable things. And
control the controllables.
Yeah, control the controllables. And then a lot of times we talk about experience and going back and doing these races year after year. A lot of people, I think that's reasonable, and maybe your fitness will get you through that, but your experience in capitalizing, like doing it one year for experience and doing the best as you can, and then going back the next year and putting all the experience, all the training into play, and then, cashing in on a big goal. So like, can you go to Dirty Kanza in the first year and knock it out of the park? Chances are slim. You really got to learn from it and go back the next year. It's the way a lot of these gravel races are, because you learn so much about pacing, hydration, nutrition, and equipment. Yeah. All of which you can practice in your gravel simulation.
Yeah, it's all in your control. I mean, it's, I think that's one of the most fun parts about cycling and being a bike racer is like, a lot of it is out of your control. I mean, people crash in front of you or whatever, but
that's controllable too.
Sort of.
Yeah. The Croatan Buck 150 for all of those gravel racers out in North Carolina, it's flat, it's in the woods, and there are these giant water holes created by the trucks and the ATV vehicles, and they're full of water, and you can't see how deep they are. And everyone comes up to them, and at the last minute, there's a line, a single line on either side, and everyone makes for that. And then, so there's a lot of crashes, and there's two ways to control this. It's the same way as racing in Europe.
Yeah.
First of all, position yourself at the front of the pack in the top 10 so you can see and anticipate when these things come up. And B is you can also back off and give yourself like a bike length or two so you can control that. But if you're up there in the scrum and you can't see, the road in front of you, that's your fault. In Europe, and when riders crash, it's not dumb luck. It's where you were riding in the pack. And riding in the pack in Europe is probably the biggest skill that you can't learn in the United States. That's why racing in Europe is very difficult for the American athletes. And that's what you pick up by getting experience there, just like you get experience in these gravel races. That was a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So we have been talking for about an hour. If there's any questions in the YouTube land, let her rip. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I think this is a successful first YouTube live experiment.
So far, so good. Yeah,
I think so.
Of course, you can subscribe if you're just listening to the audio version. You can leave us comments in on the Fast Cat Coaching page of the podcast. And of course, our new forum, if you go over to the podcast category, drop us a note if you liked it, didn't like it, got an additional question about gravel racing or anything in general. When we do our Q&As, this is where we'll ask you to post your questions. Well, I think that's it. Yeah. I'm going to go for a ride. It's super sunny.
Yeah, I went for a stupid early ride this morning just to get it out of the way, but maybe I'll have to go for another ride or something.
A double day.
That. I'm pretty tired.
You should eat more.
I know, I should eat more and probably not do super flag on
full gas.
On 38 mil gravel tires with 40 PSI.
But see, you could have ridden down Chapman much faster than the roadies.
I should have done that.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks again. And we will catch you same time next week. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, mark your calendars. Like I did with this one, I'll put up the link in the forum so you can just like hop right in and get ready. So that's cool. But yeah, it was a good one and hope you learned something. Good luck in your gravel racing and let us know how they go. Yep. All right. Peace out. Bye. And